Story 1. I used to live in Malaysia, and the school I went to was always mentioned to be haunted. One day, I went to school like usual, but I was earlier than most of my classmates. After I got into my classroom, I sat down and started reading my notes like I did every day. Until I heard someone say in my ear, "You're sitting in my seat." I forget if it was a male voice or a female voice, but it was real. I looked around to see if it was from someone behind me, but there was no one there. I turned around again, ignoring it. Then I heard it again. I ran out there so fast. Only experience I've ever had in my high school. Story 2. When I was younger, I'd see a silhouette of a man sitting on the bus bench by my school. He always crossed his legs and wore a top hat. No one else ever saw him. Sometimes he'd stop reading the book in front of him and he'd look at me. Story 3. Damn, just damn. I went to a medium-sized high school that was split up into two schools, one for 9th and 10th graders and one for 11th and 12th graders. At the grade 9, grade 10 school, called the mid-high, people always told stories of a little girl in a yellow raincoat who was ran over by a school bus on a rainy day. Supposedly, janitors' children have played with the little girl in the hallway. The scariest part is, janitors wax the floors every night and every morning, footprints reappear in front of the lockers that the little girl was assigned to. I have seen the footprints. Story 4. My school has a very interesting past. A few years before my school was on the lot where it is now, the lot belonged to a psychiatric hospital. And before that, it was a tuberculosis hospital. The school itself is separated into 6 different buildings. The library, which was once the church. The admin building, which was where the morgue was. The high school building was where they kept the lockdown patients in the psychiatric hospital. The middle school was the cafeteria. The art building was the place where the staff went on break, and the drama department was the sunroom in the TB hospital. There are lots of freaky stories about the school grounds, and there isn't a person in or around school who hasn't seen, or heard strange things. On the first day of school, in August the 1st, one of my teachers said that when they bought this lot for the school, they had to knock down the 7th building, which is now the baseball field, because doors kept locking. The power wouldn't work and people were constantly feeling sick. He told us that in the admin building, all the phones would ring simultaneously for a few seconds and then stop. I never really took any mind to this, and I always thought that the teachers were just messing around with my mind. And up until a few months ago, nothing strange had happened. But one day, when I was helping our school librarian, something did happen. I was sitting at the checkout counter in the library when a middle school girl came in. She walked around for a while when suddenly I heard a book drop right next to the girl. I watched her for a few minutes as she kept throwing books on the ground. "Aren't you gonna pick those up?" I asked. She looked over at me and shook her head no. "Well, why not?" I asked. "I'm not doing it," the girl replied. "It's the little girl in the funny clothes." I began freaking out slightly, but the girl didn't seem to mind. She checked out a book and left. When the librarian came back in, I told her what happened. She smiled. "Oh, she's harmless. I call her Jenny. She just likes to have fun. Apparently, she died in this church years ago." I looked at her like she was crazy, but I couldn't deny what I or the little girl had seen. As I was leaving, the librarian chuckled, "You should be here at night. They're all over the place." At that, I ran out the door. Story 5. My old elementary school was von Humboldt School. A horrible place. People were hearing kids in rooms that are empty, as well as getting cold in class. The basement gets so cold, you can see your breath sometimes. Me and 3 of my best friends went to the washroom. One of my friends chose not to go, and the rest of my friends went in to chat and use the bathroom. After we used the bathroom, we started to chat. We heard sounds in the vent and looked up. We all saw a child glaring at us in the vents on the left side of the washroom. It was hearing our conversation, I guess. We heard it up there and it looked at it for a good while. Once it noticed we saw whatever it was, the thing started crawling backwards quickly after being spotted. It was creepy how it moved, all twitchy, and his joints looked broken as it moved, like its body couldn't fit in there, so it crushed itself to fit. Story 6. I went to a Christian Brothers High School in Brisbane, Australia. I graduated in 1997. The main building of the school had been built in 1866 and purchased by the Christian Brothers in 1951 to be used as a school, and is now the main administration block. When I was there at school, it held no classrooms. The grounds around the main building were mostly asphalt with handball courts marked out, and a lot of our break time was spent playing handball there. Even in broad daylight, we would regularly see old men in white watching us from doors and windows on the second story of the building. We all just assumed it was the brothers watching us, as we knew several Christian brothers lived there. It wasn't until several years after I graduated that I ran into one of my old teachers and we got chatting. I mentioned the brothers and he looked confused. He said, "Only brothers X and Y live there. Nobody else did, and nobody that matches that description." Brothers X and Y were both regular teachers and well known by the students. It made the hairs on my arms stand up to hear this. It seems we were being watched over by the spirits of the building's previous tenants. The building had other strange things about it, like tunnels under the playground with hatches that had been nailed shut and concreted over, a rope burn on a banister from where a maid had allegedly hanged herself, etc. But we never felt threatened by the brothers in the windows. Story 7. Last year, 2010, I was walking to my friend's house at a very late hour, around 2:30 a.m. Now, my friend lives a block away from the abandoned school. As I'm walking to his house, I pass the school, finding my friend sitting on the steps, listening carefully. I ask him, "What's going on here, man?" He replies, "Dude, listen to the fucking noises coming from the school. And what he was hearing was extremely disturbing for a place where there were no people at all. We heard things being moved and dragged all around over the school, hearing knocks and scratching. We also saw some chairs and desks moving around as we looked into some of the windows. The two of us felt so uneasy being around the area, and nothing would prepare me for what I saw next. My friend was looking in another window, and I went to glance at another, where I found myself shivering in fear at the sight of a little girl in the window. I stared at her for a solid 3 seconds before she vanished into thin air. She had pure black eyes, a pale complexion, a motionless expression, and no nose visible on her face. After seeing this, I started walking away towards my friend's house, tears running down my face. He followed me asking what was wrong, and I told him. I could not even look at the school for a while after that experience, and still, to this day, I always avoid walking that way. I've never been so terrified in my life, and it has changed me so much. This is a true story, and I thank you for taking the time to read this. Story 8. I first want to let people know that I will not list actual names or reveal the name of my high school or where I live. Also, it is quite obvious that I am a teenager, but that is no reason to judge or deem my experience as untrue. I must begin by telling you what my English teacher saw because my experience is similar to hers. She shared with me an experience that she had while staying late after school with her writing club members. It was in the winter, so the darkness came quickly. She was in her classroom on the second floor packing up her things when one of her students screamed and ran into the classroom. My English teacher asked her what happened, and the terrified student stated that she saw a face in one of the classroom windows down the hall. My teacher laughed and calmed her down by telling her that she most likely saw her own reflection. The student left and drove home, and my teacher was alone in the building. She finished gathering her things and turned off all of the classroom lights. As she was exiting her classroom, a 7-foot-tall, solid black figure passed right in front of her face and drifted into the classroom. She left immediately. She saw this figure a few years before I enrolled. I will now describe what I experienced. I was at my high school late at night because I'm part of a mock trial team and our meetings go until dark. It was after the meeting and I was waiting for one of my parents to come and pick me up. While I was waiting, a friend and I went upstairs to ask my mock trial teacher a question. After she answered it, we decided to check out my English teacher's room to see if we could see the ghost. With no luck, we decided to head downstairs. We waited by the school's side entrance for a while. After waiting for another 5 minutes, I told my friend to wait there while I walked over to the main entrance to see if our parents were sitting in their cars in the parking lot by the main entrance. We were waiting in a hall of classrooms, and the hall was closed off to the lobby by a set of double doors with windows. Directly across the hall is the entrance into the boys' locker room, and there is a window that looks into the street and the streetlights. I was looking through the double door windows, and I could see that the lobby was dimly lit by the streetlights outside. I walked up to the double doors, and I was a good 4 feet away when I stopped. Outside the doors in the lobby, I could see a 9-foot tall solid black figure floating in midair, swooping back and forth fairly quickly. I could make out a head and shoulders, but other than that, it did not look human. It was opaque because it blocked out the light from the outside. After I saw this, I turned and sprinted back to my friend. I was terrified and out of breath, and as I began to tell him what I saw, my mock trial teacher walked down the stairs and she heard me describe the entity. I left the building and waited for my parents outside. My experience differs from my English teachers. The entity I saw was on the first floor, was much taller, and I was able to make out human features. Tell me what you think of this. Story 9. A bit of background on me and the school this happened at. I am a 19-year-old girl who very much believes in the paranormal and takes a deep interest in it. My old high school is located in a very big city in Illinois. That's all I'll say about that, though. I was around 17 when this happened. It was my junior year, and my conductor had called an early morning jazz band rehearsal on this particular day since we had the day off before, and normally early rehearsals require us to be there exactly at 7:15 a.m. or earlier, since our conductors usually are in the band room by 6:30. Well, that morning I happened to wake up early, so I left to school earlier, hoping to have a nice talk with both our conductors before the rest of my bandmates got there. I got there maybe at 6:45, and as I climbed the final step up to the 5th floor where the band room was located, we had a huge school. I yanked the first door to the band room open, which is a huge metal door that is locked every day after school is dismissed, and then the second door, which is a huge wooden door that is also locked. When I walked in there, I expected to see our chairs assembled in a traditional jazz band formation and most of the percussion instruments out. But instead, I was greeted by a dark room and just the light to our conductor's office on and their radio blaring the morning weather. This was during the winter, so it was still dark in the morning. Anyways, I walked into the office and didn't see the usual laptop and belongings of either of Mr. A's, and well, that threw me off a bit. I wondered if they'd both gone to the main office or anything else like that, so I went down to the 4th floor and sat on the steps to wait for them to get back. Because, well, let's face it, no one in their right mind stays in a huge dark room alone. About 5 minutes later, one of my conductors arrives with a handful of the other band kids, and he smiles at me and greets me good morning. Once he draws his keys to open the 2 doors to the band room, I mention that the doors were already opened, and he just chuckles and tries to open the huge metal door, and it won't budge. I raised an eyebrow as he unlocked the door. Same thing with the second one, and I was lost for words because I could have sworn they were open. To make things better, the office was sealed shut and everything was off. Once everyone started to assemble the band room, I approached Mr. A and explained the incident, and he only laughed and told me, "Oh, that must have been good old Jack. He probably wanted to meet our little ball of talent." My face went white, and after that he explained that Jack was his old conductor back in the 90s. He'd had a heart attack and died in that exact room during his final lesson before his retirement. I never arrived early to another early practice again.